Okay, so we have talked about a lot of things since morning, and I'm so glad you all are here. But now we move to how upskilling and the continuation, I say, skill development and continuous learning in the digital age has become important. All of us are working, and in the rapid, I would say, digitization, the ability to learn, adapt, upskilling has become very crucial for both individuals as well as organizations. So before I start the session, if all of you could give your quick introduction, like 20 to 30 seconds of yourselves, please. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bhavna. I work with a company called S&P Global that's in the space of indices, ratings, and intelligence. Very happy to be here with all of you today.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Lipika Verma, and I lead the HR for commercial business for Schneider Electric in India. We are an organization into energy management and industrial automation. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good to be here. I'm Vivek Ranjan. I'm Global CHRO of Zensar Technologies.
Okay, so thank you so much for your introduction. Now, Vivek, if I start with you only, since you are the only male in the panel, we believe in inclusivity, we are talking about HR. So if I start with you, as I said, that, in these changing times, we need to continuously learn, upscale. How can HR leaders actually stay relevant themselves as well as, help in the workforce in building up their career and uplifting it in a time of digitization? If you can.
Good, Reema. Good question. So I will share my experience in terms of how I do it, and maybe connect with that question on basis of that. So for me, in fact, obviously I have more than 26 years of experience, worked in US, UK, and then I've been in India and CHRO since last 7 years. So from my perspective, I believe very strongly that what is most important virtue is self-leadership and self-learning. And I believe that if we have to make an impact, that's the essence of everything which we should do as HR leaders. And the entire gamut of self-leadership, it's not only about what we do in terms of the learning which we do in classroom. We have to focus on 70-20-10 principle. And most importantly, humility to learn. So we can learn from anywhere and anybody. And it is important that we go to the grassroots and learn. In fact, I remember when I was in XLRI, we used to go to Tata plants. And I heard from one of the leaders saying that where you learn most is shop floor. So it is important that, and that is something which has stuck with me, because it is important that what is happening at the forefront, at the front end, at the ground zero level is important to understand. That will actually enhance your learning. Second, obviously, the entire spectrum of ensuring that you also find ways to network, connect, and find courses which are relevant to learn and be relevant. And I also am very strong and robust learner of business. For me, in fact, it is extremely important that we are good student of business, understand the context in which our business operates, understand the macro level impact which is there for business. And when you do that, you obviously have to stay relevant, because if you have to enable business to succeed, you cannot without staying relevant. So I believe the self-leadership part and ability to learn about business and agility to ensure that we understand what is the new trend is extremely important from the perspective of learning and developing ourselves. On the second point, when you do that, you also have to take the responsibility of doing it for your employees and the wider workforce. And for me, there are three aspects which are very important. One is about learning culture. So learning culture, in fact, just to give the context of Zensar, where I work, obviously it's a $600 million organization competing in an ecosystem where there are organizations of a size of 1 billion, 2 billion, and 10 billion. For us, what change and shift which is happening is an opportunity also. So it starts with making it sure that how you energize the organization in terms of learning. And we, in fact, have put together our purpose. We call it as together we shape experiences for better futures. So the spirit of togetherness, the spirit of shaping experience and making impact is extremely important. So it starts with the setting up the purpose and then putting together a very strong learning ecosystem. And when we talk about learning strategy, it is about learning ecosystem. And not to forget learning experience. So everything which we touch upon with respect to technology is about experience. So I believe that there are 3 areas which we have to focus on.
Lovely. Lipika, on the similar front, like with Vivek's 26 years of experience, I think you also have a similar experience level. So on those grounds, if I ask that, how do you look at it? Like, how important do you think or how are people, HR leaders, upgrading themselves, upskilling themselves, as well as the organizations, if you would like to add on something to it?
Sure. So I think Vivek has set a beautiful context in terms of why upskilling and continuous learning is so very important for us. In fact, in this digital era, it's not only, imperative, but it's a strategic advantage if you are regularly into upskilling yourself and also rejuvenating yourself with continuous learning. And people who are actually doing that have an advantage. Plus, they also are much more confident and much more successful, so to say, in terms of any solution that they are trying to come up with. So with that context, I think beyond what Vivek has shared, I think it's important to, for all of us as HR professionals to really create that ecosystem, create that learning organization, be it through various elements. So one is, of course, through self-learning modules. How do you have your learning place in the organization setup, where we focus on bite-sized learning, micro-learnings, skill development, and all of it. Beyond that, there are things where there is open talent market, where you can get into mentoring, you can have mentors alongside with you, and the organization gives you enough and more opportunities for you to explore new areas to skill yourself or reskill yourself. Beyond that, being an organization which is highly technical in nature and the products are very, very complex, because for Schneider Electric, we are not only into electrical products in the medium voltage and low voltage space, but everything is getting combined now in terms of products, in terms of services, in terms of software, and therefore the need of enhancing the digital acumen of people is super important. And therefore, how do you manage that ecosystem from an HR perspective of making sure that people, when they join the organization, how we grow them from a skill standpoint in the times to come, basis the role that they are doing. Alongside, I think it's a time when you're really looking at a T-shaped career, so to say, where people should not be just, jack of all arts. They need to have specializations in probably 1 or 2 areas. And therefore, we focus on a T-shaped career where you are having that competency of something which is much more broad-based, but maybe you specialize in a couple of areas and therefore look at a T-shaped career. So that's something where Schneider is heavily working on. So depending on the choice of employees, depending on what is the career that they want to take ahead, we try and give them very specific skilling and trainings in that area of T-shaped career. So there's something called a Gurukul, as we call it, and we have named it Gurukul in Schneider, a very Hindi name. But what we are concentrating on over there is making sure that people learn those skills, learn those products, learn those services, a lot around software, through a very extensive 1 or 2 weeks of training at Gurukul, which is set up across India. And that is something which is really helping us move the needle in the right direction. So from an HR standpoint, what I essentially was talking about is making sure that we not only upskill ourselves from a digital citizenship perspective, making sure that we understand how can we use the new technology in all our work to be working in a much more smarter and much more speedier basis, but even ensuring that we have a full ecosystem in place for people to get trained, reskilled on, and provide that continuous learning, because the dynamic market and the changes that we are seeing in the system really need a lot of enhancement in skill on a daily basis. So that's how we build careers, that's how we build our employees in the long run.
I really like the initiative Gurukul. I mean, I think Schneider Electric in itself has that element of, when they're in India, I think with their sustainability initiative also, they have this green Yodha added along to it. Wonderful. So, Bhavna, if I come to you, I mean, they have covered a lot of aspects, but according to you, what do you think, what makes the HR leaders relevant, as well as the workforce relevant in uplifting their careers through this continuous skill development?
Thank you for the question. I think the biggest part of relevance is about continuously reinventing yourself. I'm going to give you a very specific example, and that is that when I think of myself, I don't think of myself as an HR leader. I think of myself as a business leader, right? The reality is that if I don't understand how my company makes money, if I don't understand who my customers are, what do we do, then my own ability to ensure that we create value within the organization, that in itself gets impacted, right? So the biggest way for the people function to remain relevant is to ensure that we are anchored on operating realities of the business, both the environmental factors as well as the internal ecosystem factors. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is, it's lovely to attend forums such as this because there's so much give and take of thoughts, of ideas, of experiences, of what's happening where. But that is, I think I was telling you this, I was having a conversation with a very dear friend who interestingly is also based in Pune, a gentleman called Manish Ghanikar, who does a lot of coaching work with CXOs. And I was talking to him about how I feel like I need to learn something. And this was just 2 days ago. And he said, it's not about learning, it's about assimilating, retaining, and applying. So it's very cool and fashionable to talk about upskilling and about learning. The point is not how many certifications you have. The point is not how many degrees you have. The point is not what pedigree you bring to the organization. But in the world that we operate in, the point is, what is it that you are doing with the perspective that you have, with the exposure that you have, and with the point of view that you have. I think from being in a place where organizations used to, and still do, value certain types of experience and certain types of profiles, we are gradually moving into a more skills way of thinking, right? If you do a random search on, and I'll use LinkedIn just because, that's our understood platform for networking. But if you do a random search of jobs on LinkedIn, you will find that there is certain kind of years of experience, background, etc. that is there. But if you also look at a lot of companies, you will find that they are emphasizing the skills that they are looking at. Right? If you go into business schools, and I had the pleasure of being at a couple of schools, the Delhi School of Economics 3 weeks ago, Sri Ram College of Commerce a day before that, and I asked those students that how many of you are willing to wait for 25 years before you become CEOs of companies? No one raised their hand. Then I said, how about 15 years? And there were maybe 10 hands that went up. And then I said, how about 5 to 7? And all the hands went up, right? So if the lead time for expectations has gone down, the reason that lead time for expectations has gone down is because skills and the relevance of skills has gone up. So when we think about capability building and when we think about, people growing their careers, to me, the path to growth has 4 components to it. The first component to it is diverse experiences. What is the diversity of exposure that you are getting continuously? There's an exercise I've been doing ever since I graduated from MDI Gurgaon in 2006. Every 6 months I ask myself, in the last 6 months, what did I learn for the first time? Where did I fail? What did I take which I have applied, and what do I want to do differently in the next 6 months? And if I don't have answers to any one of these questions, then I know that I'm getting stuck in a rut. right? So what is the diversity of experiences that we have? That's one important component of the path to growth. Second important component is assimilation agility. So I have all of these experiences, I have all these programs that I attend, etc. What do I do with it? Do I reflect on it? Or does it just remain notes which go into one fancy LinkedIn post and that's the end of it, right? Do I actually take it and make something of it? So assimilation agility. The third one is growth mindset. Do I fundamentally have the belief that I can make the needle movement happen if I put in the effort? And yes, commitment and effort is operative over there. And the fourth one, I think, and this is true of organizations that really have that kind of an ecosystem, it's about what is the organizational attention and the organizational conversation that we are having on impact, on skills, on growth, on future readiness beyond the numbers. And those are some of the components that I believe are really important on this journey.
Very well explained. Thank you so much, all of you, for giving actually such explanatory to have a base, at least everyone sitting here will at least understand that what are we exactly talking about. Bhavna, actually all three of you explained very well that how, it's important, it's relevant to keep on upskilling as well. On this note, can you tell me any of the challenges, like Vivek, if I start with you, what are the challenges that HR professionals face in upskilling, especially in this digital age? What are those? I mean, if you can just give me one, I think we all can do one.
Yeah. One or two challenges which I can think of. One, there is always a time constraint, right? For us as HR professionals, there are multiple stakeholders to deal with. And obviously, the ecosystem has become extremely challenging. And it is important that each of the stakeholders we interface with, we be the best version of ourselves. And that takes time. That takes energy. So there is always a time constraint which is there. Second, the pace of change. Pace of change has been extremely dramatic. I remember we used to have AI as a subject of conversation. Then Gen AI has become hot topic. And now obviously we are talking about agentic AI. So the massive change which is happening in terms of technology, the disruptions which are happening, to keep up pace with that is extremely difficult. And third is obviously as HR professionals, we always have to balance between what are the strategic priorities where we should focus on and the operational aspect. We cannot say that it is either or. We have to be very efficient. We have to deliver on excellence. And we also have to be strategic and ahead of the curve. So where in fact, obviously, these are the challenges which are there. Just adding from my own experience, where I believe that fundamentally, while these challenges are there, we should make an impact is one, obviously the culture of continuous learning, which all of us spoke about. For us, it is important that we have that self-leadership and we are at the center of what's happening within the business so that we can stay ahead of the curve. And if you're not, obviously we'll become irrelevant and our business will get impacted. So that is extremely important. Irrespective of time constraint or pace of change, we have to ensure that we are ahead of the curve in terms of learning. Second, change is bound to happen. So there's as much you can anticipate in terms of change. And what is important is our agility to react whenever there is a change and we are able to master it and deliver outcome. So, so we have, our centering has to be right. The centering has to be that, look, I'm prepared to deal with any kind of change and I will ensure that I'll deal with that very effectively. And obviously, these kind of forums, networks, and bite-sized learning, and making it sure that learning is in the flow of work. So learning cannot be an extra work. It cannot be perceived as something which has to be done because it's a task. No, learning has to be in the flow of work because you can't, if in today's ecosystem, if you don't learn, you're not going to make an impact. So those are the challenges and those are the ways we can deal with it and handle it.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. We'll circle back. So we got time constraint, we got the pace of change. Lipika, what according to you are some challenges that HR professionals face?
Yeah, so beyond what he spoke about, I think what we are focusing on from a Schneider perspective is the impact that you're making in your role. And I think when we say impact, it's an acronym of 6 things, and M over there actually stands for mastery. And that is where, skills is something which is becoming super important. As we say that skills is the new currency, and therefore, how do you manage, skills in a meaningful way, and how do we make sure that people are getting skilled in the area that they are working on in order to create that impact in the roles that they are doing. So one of the constraints is what I see beyond, beyond cost, beyond the fact that people are not very ready to take these trainings or take the skills engagement as such because of lack of time. And I think everyone in organization is under a lot of pressure related with their work, and therefore taking that time out to go through any specific module, go through different training programs that we provide is a little bit tricky. So in that sense, even if they have gone through the program, the constraint still remains is how much the employee is actually using that skill or training provided to have that impact in the role. And is there a way we can measure it? If not, that remains a question mark. So I think one of the biggest things is to what even Bhavna was mentioning while she was answering the last question, how much are you able to take off that program, off that learning, and how much are you able to apply it in your day-to-day work in order to show the impact on the role that you're doing. So it's all combined. So there are multiple constraints over there, but there are solutions as well around that.
Lovely. Bhavna, your take on it?
So I think for us, the biggest, I won't call it challenge, I will say the biggest realization is different people absorb, assimilate, and learn differently, right? And therefore to say that it's a bit of a myth. Any HR professional who says that HR knows it all when it comes to driving learning, that's factually not correct, right? No single professional will know it all, right? It is a collaborative effort where it's about what is the individual's path, what is the perspective of the manager or the people leader of that individual, what is the perspective of the business, how can we augment it, right? And the way we are looking to democratize and give people the choice and the freedom of learning in a way that makes it relevant and easy for them is by creating an ecosystem. And we've got a few components of that ecosystem in place. So for example, we've got a lot of pull-based content in the form of academies that we have, right? Now, we are a global organization. We work out of more than 40 odd countries, and therefore it is as important for somebody in country A to have access to opportunities as it is for somebody in country Z, right? And therefore scalable solutions is very, very crucial. How are we doing that? Pull-based content in online academies, you pick it up, you consume it at your pace, you learn at your pace, and you apply it at your pace, right? You also have, we've got partnerships with companies that have video-based content, which is for skill upgradation, right? Consume the 30-minute video, improve your art of interviewing skills, for instance, if you're a manager who's hiring continuously, right? Or you want to build your own emotional intelligence, look at that 20-minute module, get some practical tips to do it. S&P is one of a handful of organizations in the world that has a standing career coaching team within the organization. Certified career coaches. Career coaching is completely confidential, and every one of our 36,000 plus colleagues can leverage career coaches as part of their growth journey at their discretion. The fourth element that we realized is that while we have our day jobs, we also want to have different experiences. So can we promote gigs within? And therefore, that whole conversation on projects, on internal job postings, on gig work, that is something that is growing more and more. And what we also realize is that no matter what you create internally, there will always be a plus that is possible. So we've got an external learning budget for every single one of our employees to say, if you and your manager believe that you need a certain type of exposure, a certain certification which is not available internally, by all means sign off, go out, go do it, and the company will pay for it up to your learning budget. What this has helped do is, it's put all the pieces of the puzzle out there. But it's also given people the right to think about how they want to bring the pieces together to create their own picture, to create their own journey and their own path. And I think that helps us tap into people's preferred ways of learning a lot more effectively.
Very well said. So we have given the challenges as well as the resolutions to it. So understanding time constraint, pace, impact, and of course with an external budget, and then giving the freedom that okay, you do it, you upscale yourself. That definitely makes my point. But as Vivek was also talking about, how technology has enhanced, and we have last 10 minutes. So before I get on to technology, does anyone have any questions right now to ask them, our panelists? Raise of hands. Yeah. It's okay, we can get a mic here. Can we get a mic?
This is specific to Bhavna, because Bhavna came out with a very interesting point in terms of how a HR person has to skill himself or herself, more importantly, staying relevant at all points of time. I think as HR leader, we also have an additional responsibility of creating an ecosystem, creating something where learning thrives. So in that context, I would like to know from you, what is the ecosystem you're creating for learning to thrive? Career coach, something which you said, but still, what is that ecosystem you're trying to create and how it is beneficial for the organization? And more importantly, what is the business impact out of it?
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. And I think the ecosystem that we're trying to create, I spoke about all of the different components of it, right? The one component that I haven't spoken about is the maturity of people leaders. People leaders is the term that we use for managers in our company, because we believe that people leadership is so much more than managing human resources, right? The reality is when you look at maturity of people leaders, it's often a spectrum. Right, that spectrum will be to do with just the overall perspective, does the person have the skill of dealing with tough situations as much as easy situations, etc. So for us, part of creating a learning and upskilling enabled environment is about helping our people leaders grow and be more effective. The third component that I would talk about, so one was the opportunities for people, second was people leader maturity. The third thing that I will talk about is transparency in the organization. Are senior leaders comfortable to receive any question at any point of time and provide a response to the best that they can? There is information that, let's be honest, right? There is information that cannot be shared. But in what can be shared, do you do a good job of being out there, being open, being accessible, and speaking the language of your people? I'm going to give you a very small example, right? Even today, most organizations, millennials will be the majority of the workforce, right? But you have Gen Z that is catching up very quickly. The language of Gen Z is a very interesting language, right? It often resists me and leaves me also grappling a little bit, right? So we tried a recent experiment. Most organizations have this concept of town halls. So did we. 45 minutes, maybe an hour, global audience, things like that. We said we will do something called accelerators. 25 minutes, max 30 minutes. We close it off at 30 minutes. And we are going to try and use language that works for everybody. Right? So we actually have senior leaders who are trying to pick up language and not just use what comes to them naturally, but use language which colleagues across the world also feel comfortable using. Right? The other thing that we're doing is making leadership more accessible. So, whether it is our CEO, we have Martina Chung, who's taken over as our CEO effective November last year, or it is any of our other leadership team, executive leadership, or operating committees of our different divisions or corporate functions, being out there, sitting not in their offices, but having conversations with people in cafeterias, real conversations. And, there are questions that have come up. For instance, we've had colleagues say that in the whole world, there are so many companies that are laying off. What are we thinking of differently? And sharing an honest point of view to that. So when we look at an organization that is conducive, or an environment that is conducive to learning, it is about, and I'm going to use a jargonistic term, but it is about creating psychological safety. And you create psychological safety when the trifecta of the individual, the manager, and the leadership are all making efforts Sometimes those will land, sometimes it'll require course correction, but are we making the right efforts? That's our attempt.
It's a beautiful question. I just wanted to build on what Bhavna has mentioned because there's something which is the essence of the session which we are having. So I'll put it very simply. I'll try to do it as soon as possible. I know. So when we are talking about learning ecosystem, it has to start with creating that will, that hunger in our people, that why they should learn. And so it has to start with what is your business context. For example, in Zensar context, I will just give an example that it's a digital transformation company competing in an ecosystem where we are competing with companies of a size 5 or 10 times than ours. Then the culture has to be that we are here to make an impact, make a difference. So first of all, create that will and create that hunger in people and energize people to learn. And it also has to be by demonstrated values. For example, we have the value of one with client, which is one Zensar, nurturing, empowering, and centered around client. So it is important that you create that ecosystem and culture where everybody, there's a pull towards learn that why we are doing what we are doing. Second is about the learning strategy, which I touched upon. So it has to be business strategy. It can't be just learning strategy. For example, in our context, there are practices and there are capabilities where we want to focus on, including AI, Gen AI, and all those aspects. So we have service line academies focused towards those futuristic capabilities. And then also identify areas which matters. For example, setting up customer academies so that learning is in the flow of the work. It is not disconnected with the impact which you're making for customers. Third, knowing about domain, because if we just know about technology and don't know about domain, we are not going to solve business problems. And then obviously creating a culture where we learn from each other, the communities, that is extremely important. And third, not to forget that you have to provide consumer-like experience to our people. Because when we are talking about creating a pull and there is a strategy, you have to make your learning experience consumer-like so that they have learning accessible and they are able to reach out. And they also, when they learn, there is an impact to them and there is a connection with respect to their capability development. And when you have that and you capture it and then review it to thorough governance, then you make an impact to business and then obviously the budget will flow. So it's end to end, but it has to be robust in terms of execution of that.
So I hope they have cleared all your doubts. Lipika, I have one last question for you, and we have 2 minutes, 54 seconds to be precise. We are talking about digital age, we are talking, and how can we not touch on technology and AI? How do you think technology can be leveraged to enhance these skill developing programs for the future workforce, which can make it engaging and accessible to the employees per se?
Yeah, so I think technology, we all would agree that is super, super important, right? Because any solution that you are wanting to come up with, unless and until you have technology attached to it, you can't scale it up. Especially for bigger organizations, you have to have technology, and of course for smaller as well. But at length or at a big scale, if you are wanting to get into anything, you have to use technology. I'll give you a simple example of what we are doing in Schneider as far as skills and learning is concerned, and it's a big project which is going on. It's called Skills Project, where we are using technology right from the job architecture to learning, and it's a big linkage. Putting the entire job architecture in place, looking at different roles, looking at what is the skill needed for that role, not only internally from Schneider, but even outside, what are those competencies and skills that we need, what is the proficiency level of those skills needed for doing a specific role at a particular level, so to say, or at a particular grade. Then getting the employee to assess where he or she is with respect to that particular competency, that particular skill, and at which level. The manager to do all that, and then really link it up with the trainings or skilling programs that the person will go through. Attached with it, we are also looking at linking the entire piece with the career wheel, so to say, because there is a lot of movements which happens for people within the organization as far as different roles are concerned. So let's say in HR, if someone is doing an HR business partnering role and someone wants to get into rewards, for example, or someone wants to get into talent management, for example, how does the person need to add on those skills to oneself in order to get to that level and that particular role. And that is something which we are trying to drive through a platform, and there are many platforms available. We have tied up with something called Eightfold, there is Skyhive, there is Gloat, you all must be familiar with these names. But that particular platform is going to help us build the skills of people and link the career advancement of everyone, actually related with almost 160,000 employees. So that's a big, big project which is going on, and it will go live in 2026. But why technology is important is to really make sure that we are able to have skilled workforce, and there will be several linkages as well. It will also help us in workforce planning if you really think about it, because today is a virtual world. If we need to have a particular skill set for a particular role we are looking at, we can just use the skills project and the platform through technology to figure out, okay, this particular skill set is available in Canada, for example, and this person can actually devote 30% of his time to do this project. And you know, the gig workforce internally is something that we are very, very advanced with. There is something called OTM, which is your open talent market, where you get these opportunities to take up projects. Internal gigs are available. You can shadow someone. You can devote 20% of your time for a particular skill that you're wanting to take up. So I think through technology, we are actually linking the entire life cycle of an employee, right from you know, the time the person joins the organization, how we skill up the person, and then how the person moves in terms of his or her own career journey and make an impact on the organization. So to sum it up, technology is a must, and it's imperative that we follow it across all organizations.
Thank you, Lipika. Thank you so much. And so is our time. But thank you so much, all of you. We touched upon why is it relevant today, the key challenges, how we can overcome them, as well as, of course, when skill development and continuous learning in the digital age that we're talking about. I'll come to all you three when I will have to upscale myself again. But thank you so much for your presence. If I can request all of you to please give applause to them. Thank you.